Hello and welcome everyone. We're so excited to have you here for Understanding Cybersecurity. I'm just going to give everyone a few moments to trickle in before we get started. We've got a great one for you all today. As you're all coming in, we'd love an active chat. We'd love to get to know you a little bit better. Please introduce yourself in the chat. You can send a little message telling us about yourself and a little bit about your business. You can also tag us on social media, let everyone know that you are here, improving your small business acumen on social media, letting them know that you're at our webinar. While we're going through the presentation, we love to have questions and answers if you have any. So please feel free to use the Q&A to ask your questions, or you can also put your questions in the chat. And I'm just going to give everyone a few more moments to join in here before we get started. And again, if you are just joining us, you are here for Understanding Cybersecurity. Just giving everyone just one more moment to join us for our webinar. We're so excited to have you all. Please feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. All right, fantastic. We're so excited to have all of you here. Thank you so much for joining us. I wanted to welcome you. My name is Rachel, and I am the Marketing and Communications person here at the Small Business Development Center at Temple University. The Temple SBDC helps small businesses to start, grow, and succeed. We do this through our no-cost consulting and a variety of training webinars and no-cost programs like the one you're attending today. You're joining us for Understanding Cybersecurity. We are recording today's webinar, and a copy of that recording as well as the PowerPoint will be sent to all of our attendees within a few days in a follow-up email. All of our attendees have been muted, but like I said earlier, we encourage you to post any questions that you have in the chat or in the Q&A. Now I am going to turn the floor over to Sheila.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining today. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. As Rachel said, we're here today to talk about cybersecurity, everyone's favorite topic. Today's presentation is being put on by Temple University Small Business Development Center and hosted by Temple's Fox School of Business, which has been serving the small businesses of Philadelphia, Eastern Montgomery, and Lower Bucks County since 1983. Our mission is to provide entrepreneurs and business owners the knowledge needed to make smart business decisions and to prosper. I'm Sheila Bishop. My background is I have more than 35 years of varied IT experience, from being a systems programmer to being a developer, just about everything I always say besides networking, because I always feel like networking is more like plumbing, deciding what's flowing through the pipes. My last position before joining the SBDC, I was the VP of Monitoring Services Operations at Bank of America, and I have my Bachelor's of Computer Science from Temple University. So today we're going to go over, what is cybersecurity, what are the common threats, and how you can go about securing your system. So there's a lot of talk about cybersecurity in the news. It seems that every day we hear about more and more attacks. But what exactly is it, right? So cybersecurity is the practice of protecting networks, servers, and all the internet-connected devices from unauthorized attacks and malicious attacks. How you handle and protect your data is central to the security of your business, just like locking up your store would be, or keeping your physical assets safe. You also need a plan for the unexpected loss of or theft of your data. And this is especially true in our increasingly connected world. The Internet of Things refers to how everyday objects now are connected to the internet and exchange data using embedded sensors, right? So we have smart cars, we have smart TVs, we have smart cribs, right? And these make our lives so much easier, but as much as we love them, cyber criminals love them as much, if not more, because it gives them more points of access into our systems and into our data. So why do you need cybersecurity? Well, it's really there to protect your business. Having a cyber attack, certainly can disrupt your business, but it also has reputational damage to your business. There can be liability. If you're not taking the right steps, you can be sued for the loss of data, or if other people's businesses or data is put at risk. And there's even the cost of recovering from a cyber crime. It's a lot, even though it takes time and effort to set up a good, secure system, it does not take as much time as trying to recover your system once you've been attacked. And you also have an obligation to keep your customer data secure and to keep your employees productive. And when I talk about reputational risk, some big examples of companies that have taken reputational hits from cyber attacks are in 2017, Equifax, one of the credit bureau, credit reporting businesses, lost the data through a cyber attack of 147 million people. And the repercussions of that were huge, because they were supposed to be the people who keep our data safe, and now they've lost all the information about our Social Security or our credit cards, and they had to pay for restitution. They had to make credit reports free for people, and they had to go through quite a bit to try to recover from it from a liability standpoint and even from a reputational standpoint. And then in 2013, I don't know if everybody remembers this because now it's been 10 years ago, but Target was hit as a victim of cybercrime, and over 40 million Target credit card data were stolen, and along with 70 million other customer records. And that was all over the news, and Target stock took a huge hit based on that. So it really can affect you not only, and these were, like I said, people stealing data. There are other crimes that can hit you and affect you in other ways. So what are some of the common threats, right? Some of the drivers for cyber crimes are that cyber criminals seek to exploit human and security vulnerabilities to obtain goods and monies, right? They can do it for financial gain, for recognition. Some of this is just an ego thing for them. And more it's been for political motivation. One country's really attacking another, right? Russian hackers, attacking our hospitals, our universities, just to kind of make the US look bad, drive down like the value of our dollar, that type of thing. And there are multiple types of attacks, and we're going to go through these in the coming slides. So the first one we're going to talk about are computer viruses, and they are a form of malicious software. Viruses attach themselves to other programs, alter the post-programming code, and then replicate themselves. And if this replication is successful, then the program is said to be infected with a computer virus. And you can see why it was adopted this term, since that's basically what influenza does to the human body. Email is the most popular method to spread the virus. So this is if you get an email with some kind of link in it saying you've won $1 million, or it's Social Security and they want to validate your information, and you click on it, and now you're suddenly someplace else. You probably have downloaded some kind of virus, or potentially a worm, which is very much like a virus, except worms don't require a host program to replicate. They can replicate on their own. The way you usually find these is a slowdown in the performance of your computer, of your networking system, right? So suddenly if your computer was responding very quickly, and it gets slower and slower and slower, since the virus is replicating itself and replicating itself and replicating itself and using more and more of your computer resources to replicate itself. That's usually you see the decline in the computer ability to function as it should be. And these viruses can be very damaging, right? As you can see from some of the ones I have listed. And I usually ask at this point, has anyone actually been affected by any of these viruses? Or because a while ago, and when I was a few jobs back, I came into work and I had an email that said, "I love you," and from a woman who I very barely knew. I was on like a committee with, and the inside was like something to, like, I want to discuss, something, click here. And I was like, and I called my boss over. I didn't really think virus, I thought HR issue, but and I did not click it, and that was early in the morning. And as more people came in, I could hear people around me having, saying the same thing, like, "What is this email? What is this email?" And if I had clicked on that link, it would have gone through my email address and emailed out the virus to everyone who was on my contact list, along with doing the damage that it was going to do. Yeah, so that's good. Yeah, these are some of them, and they come back too, right? Because like I said, "I love you" was probably 10, 12 years ago. And so, now you're probably not seeing it because the antivirus software will find it and remove it before you see it. But hackers will kind of retake those old viruses, and especially now with AI, rejigger them to get them past the antivirus software. So it's always a fight between the malicious people and the antivirus software to keep up with what's going on. And this link below here, if you want to learn more about the worst viruses, you can find out more below. Another malicious attack that people can do is something called a rootkit. And rootkits initially were not created for malicious purposes. They were created by systems administrators to get access to a system where the root password was lost or the administrative password was lost, without losing all the data on the system, without having to wipe the system and rebuild it. But they got out into the wild, and then they started to be used for malicious purposes. And it literally does that. It allows non-access people to gain administrative access to your system. And it really is a set of tools as opposed to a single virus. And it masks its existence because it has root access, it has admin access on your system. So not only can it infect your system, but then it can go behind itself and clean up all the evidence that it was there, right? And once it's in place, it's generally not going to be like a virus where it uses up excess capacity on your system. It's going to sit there and just kind of steal the password information, steal user data. It can use computer resources to be like a bot on your network, but that's basically what it is. And there was a very famous example of a rootkit where it wasn't hackers, but it was actually Sony, that makes audio equipment and puts out music. Back before all the streaming services, when all the music companies were up in arms that we were all burning our own CDs, Sony came up with this great idea to start copyrighting their CDs, and this tricky idea to also go back and put digital rights management on previous CDs you may have downloaded. And they did that by their new CDs coming out with free music players and a rootkit, which when you went to play the CD or try to burn the CD on your laptop, would automatically get installed without telling you it was doing it, without any notification. And so it was embedding its own rootkit. And then anytime you played you tried to burn a song with Sony rights, it would stop you from doing that. But they don't have the authority to do that on people's systems. So they were sued, and there was a class action lawsuit brought against them for, installing malicious software on your system. And then when they tried to put out a fix to fix it, they actually bricked people's systems, and then they got sued again. So yeah, it's kind of one of the more famous rootkit examples out there. Now, the most active cyber crime that's out there right now is ransomware, and it is one of the ones that affects small businesses the most, right? And with ransomware, it doesn't delete your files. It's not necessarily even stealing your information. What it does is it denies access to your computer systems or files by encrypting them. So it's still there, but you can't access it because it has encrypted the data, and they know the decryption key, and they will provide the decryption key to you once the ransom is paid. And this is usually carried out again by like an email attack, by getting somebody to click on something, and then the Trojan file is infected with the malware, and now it's on your system, right? And the thing to note is that when you pay the ransom, the ransomware software is not gone. They've just decrypted the data. So once you've gotten your data back, you actually really have to rebuild your systems from scratch, making sure not to pull that ransomware back into the new system. So this is a very expensive attack to have happen to you, because again, not only are you paying the ransom, but you also then have to kind of rebuild your systems, making sure not to pull the malware along with it. And it was in the news quite strikingly in 2021 when the Colonial Pipeline shut down. And that was a big concern because it was the main gas supply to the East Coast, right? And they pretty much made every mistake that you could make. And they're a really good case study for why cybersecurity is important and what you should not do, right? The people gained access by using an account for an employee who was no longer there. So an account that should have been deleted. They sent an email that looked like it came from an internal person in the company. Somebody clicked on the malware infected the systems. They didn't have good enough backups or old enough backups so that they could not recover their system by rebuilding it. And they did have to end up paying the ransom after being shut down for a really long time. So like I said, they pretty much every mistake you could have made, Colonial Pipeline made in terms of cybersecurity in that case. So, and then you have web-based attacks, right? Denial of service attacks and distributed denial of service attacks are basically the same thing. It's just whether it comes from one point or multiple points, and really all of them now come from multiple points. Way back in the olden days when there weren't bots, you could have it coming directly from one individual or one set of computers in like one location. But now with bot armies, they just flood the systems from multiple locations. It makes it harder for firewalls to shut out that traffic, because if they shut it out from this location, they just start sending the traffic from another location. And the idea is to basically make servers unavailable by flooding it with requests. And really that's just it. It's just hitting and hitting and hitting and hitting at the server and the system service until it just goes down. And this happened in January to Christiana Hospital System. Russian hackers did a big distributed denial of service attack and brought down their patient portal, and it was down for like over 5 days until they could recover from it. Cross-site scripting, SQL injection, and path traversal are not the same, but they're sort of related, because they're all attacks seeking to take control of your website or get access to the underlying data, right? So, and they all do it in different ways, right? Cross-site scripting is trying to do it basically through the front end of your website. SQL injection is trying to do it from your database, and path traversal is trying to do it from the operating system level, right? So cross-site scripting, you have malicious code submitted within a comment. Somebody makes a comment to your website, and if you don't have like proper software on your website that will look for this, that malicious software can be triggered. The next person who makes a comment, and it can take control of it'll execute that code, and that code could take control of your website, redirect. It could make it so that your domain name is now redirecting to an undesirable site, like porn or pseudo pharmaceuticals, or it could start stealing data. With SQL injection attacks, the attacker submits data, including, like, they're submitting data to your site, but it includes SQL commands. And if it's not protected against, then those commands execute, and it's returning data directly from your database. And path traversal seeks to gain access to your underlying operating systems, files, and directories. It can occur when parameters aren't sanitized. So and this has to do, it's probably, more techie for like people like Linux or really into Windows. It has to do when characters aren't escaped correctly. And so they can get out through your website address to your operating system. And the parameters need to be sanitized, and you need to make sure that on your operating system, you have good access control so that that only people who are on that system and have access can ever get to those directories, even if somebody could do this attack. This attack is also known as a // because that's a lot of times how you do it, just // and directory traversal or directory climbing, because that's basically what you're doing. You're starting at that website directory that maybe you got in through, and then you're going through the directories to see where you can find data. You might, find what you're looking for, like customer information, credit card information, your own financial information, that type of thing. And then there's man-in-the-middle attacks. And that's when the attacker inserts themselves between two parties, right? So you have two legitimate parties who are talking to each other, maybe sharing financial data or that type of thing, and somebody puts themselves in the middle, right? And the idea is to steal personal information, such as login information, financial data, personal or professional data. And it's usually it's a form of session hacking, and you can have it be from a sniffer, where an attacker uses software to intercept that data between the devices, or it can be like an evil twin, where the attacker duplicates a legitimate Wi-Fi network and then uses that to insert enables them to catch that data as it's going through. And this is one of those, when you hear people say, don't use a cafe or a airport Wi-Fi to do your, secure information unless you're using like a VPN. This is why, because sometimes maybe somebody has set up an evil twin where it looks like you've connected to your coffee house's Wi-Fi, and you really have connected to the guy next to you's laptop, and he's now able to intercept the data as it goes across the network because he's getting it before it ever even hits the network. And then 90% of the way people get into data is through social engineering and human error, right? So this is kind of like the Achilles heel, right? People making mistakes, people being misled. So the first one is phishing, right? And that's where you get those emails with the link that says you've won $1 million, or this is from the CEO, I need this report, click here, so when it's internal. And it's a fraudulent message designed to trick the receiver into revealing personal or sensitive information or to deploy malicious software. And then you also have like different classifications of it. You have spear phishing, where they go after somebody specific. Like maybe they go after Sally in accounting because they figure she has the financial records. And so they, find out information from her. Maybe as simple as looking on her social media to find out her kid plays softball and write the email like, "Hi, Sally, it was great to see you at the softball, the company softball great team game. I need the records for, blah, blah, blah. How about if you just send me your user ID and password and I'll look them up myself," right? Something like that. That's kind of spear phishing. You're targeting somebody directly. And whaling is when you go after like a big guy, the CEO, the CFO. It's kind of the same idea. You're targeting it, but you're targeting it to a very, big target. And then you have, like I said, things you might not think of, right? Like infected removable media. Like when I talked about that Sony media issue, that really was infected removable media, right? Because people didn't want a rootkit when they installed that music to play, right? A lot of times free thumb drives, you have to be careful with those. I never use those free thumb drives that are out at conferences or out whatever, because you don't know, and you've already put it into your machine. It's not like you can tell from the outside, right? Because it's there, right? You also need to be careful when you're like at a hotel and they have a USB charger. Some of those are not just power, they download power and data. So you can get a device, which I have somewhere, that allows you to block the data from coming through and only allow power through. I think that's gone down a bit as people have become more aware of it and have gotten more of those devices, but it still does happen. You also have a problem with fake websites, and this is where somebody sets up a real site to scam people and collect data. It's really popular to do it with DMVs, right? So a lot of DMVs across the country have been kind of spoofed by people setting up fake DMVs. And a lot of times they'll do it like delldmv.com, right? And people have a tendency to just type in .com and not think about it and not think, well, this is a government site, it wouldn't be .com. And if you think about all the information you give to your DMV, you can see why they might want to do it. The FBI's been spoofed this way by just doing the .com versus the .gov. And the one I think is interesting is it happened to the BBC. And there they weren't necessarily trying to steal data. The activist who did it felt that the BBC just had too liberal a slant and create their own fake BBC website. So then you can also have, again, ones you wouldn't think of as cyber crimes, right? But and that's like impersonation, dumpster diving, shoulder surfing, and eavesdropping, right? But this is, again, all there to steal your data, right? Somebody comes to your site dressed like a delivery person, and people just let them in. They don't necessarily check the credentials, and that person can take your laptop, take papers off your desk, right? So you need to be really thinking about that too, and train your employees and train yourself to check people's credentials. Dumpster diving is just that. People go and look through people's trash to get their secure information. So again, shred what you don't want people to see. Shoulder surfing, I always say, if you're next to me on an airplane, I'm going to look, and you're using your laptop, I'm going to glance over and see what you're doing because I'm bored, I'm on an airplane, and I'm curious, right? That's shoulder surfing. And it can be very benign, like I'm not going to do anything with that. Or it can be that somebody's really targeting you, and he knows you like to go to a particular coffee shop and do work, and will sit behind you and basically see what you're doing. They kind of screens for that type of thing so people can't see what you're doing. But again, a lot of it is just being aware of your surroundings, aware of what people can see, and eavesdropping is the same thing. Being aware of what you're saying, who can overhear you, what you're talking about in public. And then there's scareware. And scareware is using shock, anxiety, or threats to manipulate people. And this can happen, right? We've all kind of heard, I'm assuming all of us have gotten that you owe money to you owe money to the IRS, and they're going to come, the police are coming to your door any minute now, you call, right? That was so popular like 4 years ago or something. And they target a lot of older people with these kind of calls, like your grandson's been kidnapped, all of that is scareware. But it can happen inside companies too, where they say, the president, the CEO has called me and he needs this data now. So you get me this data now, no questions, nothing, just get me this data now. That's another form of scareware. And you need to, again, educate your employees, that that's not how things would happen. So again, just be aware of your surroundings and be aware of what's not normal. All right, so we talked about all the threats. Does anyone have any questions? Yeah, it does still happen today. Yeah, it does. Okay, so we talked about all the scary stuff. So now we can talk about what you can do to try to prevent some of that from affecting you. So the first thing is, if you have a website, you definitely need to make sure you have SSL set up, right? Which actually is TLS, but I think SSL is easier to pronounce, so we still call it SSL. And it was developed in the kind of mid-90s by Netscape to ensure privacy and data integrity, right? And what it really is it's a secure channel from one website to another website, so that as the data flows between those two websites, the data is encrypted. And that encryption key is a one-time use only encryption key. So even if somebody caught that key and then you connect it again to that same website or another website and they were like, oh, I can decrypt it because I have this key, it won't work. It's a one-use only key. And that's why it's considered very secure. it doesn't mean your website is completely secure, but it does mean that the communications between it and other websites on the internet will be secure. And it used to be that, people would say, well, if you don't have, like credit card data or personal data or that type of data in your website, you don't really need to worry about it. But Google will penalize you now from your SEO if you do not use SSL. So even if you only have on your website information about, walking dogs or something like that, you still need to get an SSL certificate and have that all set up for your website. And then everybody's favorite is password management, right? I always feel like when I start this one, everyone just groans, right? Because it's difficult to actually follow these rules, but it is super critical that you do. It's probably the most important thing you can do to help ensure the security of your systems, right? I'm going to say you really need a minimum of 12 characters. I've heard people say, 8 characters, but they've done studies, right? And if you have an 8-character password and it's perfect, you've used uppercase characters, lowercase characters, it's completely random, it doesn't have the name of your dog in it, you have special characters, @ and bangs and numbers, and it's just the best 8-character password you could possibly have. If somebody goes to break your password, it'll take them 5 minutes to break that password using the current technology that's out there. And that seems pretty scary, right? Now, probably no one will, but that's how long it would take. With a 12-character password, even if you really just use upper and lowercase characters, which I'm not recommending, that same person, it would take them 6 years to break your password. So, and I'm going to tell you, if next year these numbers are going to change, it'll probably take less than that for a 12-character password. These systems just get better and better and better. The malicious, actors just keep working to, improve this, and they pretty much steal other people's computer processing power to do these things. So it's really no skin off their nose how much computer power it's taking to run these password crackers. So, why not, right? So you really need to make it a minimum of 12 characters. And it needs to be a mix of upper, lowercase characters, numbers, and special characters. And special characters are the exclamation point, the ampersand, those characters. You need to change it often because you don't know, somebody might have just cracked it. So the idea is to change it often enough that you're one step ahead of these, cracking software things. And it's even better to use multi-factor authentication. And multi-factor authentication means it's something you know and something you have. And sometimes people say it's something you have or something you are, but I sort of think those are the same things because I have a hand, I have an eyeball, right? So I always just say it's something you know and something you have, right? So the idea, like a lot of times it'll, like your bank, hopefully you've set up for your bank and you'll have to put in a password and then it'll say, I'm going to text you a number to your phone. And then you have to put that number in and that'll let you through because it's ensuring that you have the phone that they have on record, right? If you said just, oh, send it to this other phone, they're not going to do it. I mean, the idea is that you have this piece of equipment that you've told them is yours. They don't just want to send you a code. They want to make sure that you have something that's yours and something you have that you said is yours. And that's why it can be a fingerprint or an eyeball. But again, I sort of think of those as something I have. So that's why I usually just say something you know and something you have. And you need to secure your passwords. Don't leave them, see my password in the back of the side is a joke, not a recommendation. And when passwords get to be this complicated, you're not going to remember them, right? And that's why tools like LastPass or 1Password are, really good because they're software vaults. Google has one too. So they help you, so that you're not having to remember these long, difficult passwords. And then for these tools, try to make it something that will kind of trigger a memory. So this is really the password you need to remember and not have it written down. You also don't want to reuse old passwords, and you certainly don't want to use the same password across multiple accounts or multiple types of systems, right? If somebody breaks into your Netflix account, you don't want them to be able to get into your banking account. Or if they break into your banking account, you don't want them to be able to get your 401k account, right? So, you know, keep each password distinct and separate. And don't use obvious letter replacement like O's for zeros and ones for L, because again, I mean, this is code that's being done, not people sitting down. So it's all written in there, right? They have dictionaries, you know, they're using dictionaries to break it, you know, they're using these number of replacements and that type of thing. And remember, we talked about, like in the other slide, about spear phishing, when they go after a person particularly. If they do that also, they're going to see your social media, they're going to know your child's name, your pet name, you know, and there's quizzes online where they ask you where you went to school, and these are all the things you would answer as security questions. That's why you don't generally want to do those. You know, so be careful what you say on social media, and also be careful not to use any data that you would put on social media as part of your password. So any questions about that? SSL included with Squarespace, for example, generally speaking, it is. You may have to do additional setup to get the SSL just set up. But usually if you read what's included, Squarespace is usually included with the bigger content management systems like Bluehost, Squarespace, Wix. That's usually part of what you're paying for your yearly or monthly fee. And if it's not, there's information that you'll get with this presentation that'll show you how you can get an SSL and how you would set it up. Okay. Okay, and another important factor is you don't want people to have access to what they don't need access to, right? So you want everyone, including yourself, to have the least privilege that they need, right? So if you have somebody in accounting and somebody who's in deliverables, they should not have the same system access, right? The guy who ships your product should not also be able to see their accounting information. And there's a lot of reasons for that. One is if one of those accounts gets compromised, it's sort of a firewall around how much of your data can be lost, right? And the other is that if something happens, you sort of know maybe where the attack came from. So, and if for some reason, like you need the guy from receivables to fill in for the person from accounting, then you only give them access for that period of time and you take it away. And this is also, if somebody leaves your company, shut down their access as soon as they leave. Don't wait a week, don't wait a day, you know, shut it down as soon as they leave. Now, it might not seem like applications and systems management is security work, but again, it's critical to keeping your system secure. Cyber criminals keep track of vulnerabilities in versions of applications and operating systems. And so if there's older versions of those running on your systems, they probably have security vulnerabilities that are known and can be exploited, right? So you want to back up your systems regularly so that you have, if something happens like that pipeline example, you can rebuild your systems with the backups. You want to install your operating systems and program updates. Preferably, you want to auto update them, right? So maybe have it set first times that, you know, like Saturdays at 2 or that type of things. You want to definitely install anti-malware software on your PC, on your other systems, on your websites. And you want to keep your software, your website software, your themes, and any plugins patched and up to date, and you want to remove any that you're not using. And the same on your systems. If you've loaded code and then you've decided it's not something you want, remove it. Don't just leave it there, because the fact it's on your system means it's vulnerable to somebody to exploit it. And if you're not using it, you're probably not updating it. So it could possibly have older versions of like Java and that type of thing that have, you know, things that can be exploited. And again, use complex passwords and don't perform sensitive tasks over public Wi-Fi or unencrypted connections. And so if you say, well, I need to, I travel for work and I'm going to need to be able to use my computer and I'm going to need to be able to do work, then definitely you need to look into a virtual private network. And what that is it's a remote connection over the internet that's secure and encrypted, right? It's a tunneling protocol, and it basically sort of acts like the SSL certificate, which is when you start the transmission and to the end of the transmission, that data is encrypted. And even if somebody grabbed it, even in a sniffer or that type of thing, if they grab that data, it's not going to do them any good. They don't have the decryption key, right? So it can slow down. It can slow down the transmission a little bit because it's being encrypted and decrypted every time you're sending the data. But from a security standpoint, it really makes a difference. Like I said, especially if you're working outside of a trusted network, anytime you're doing that. And you can set up your virtual private network to only turn on when you're working outside a secure network, if you really are worried about performance. And then there's firewalls and DMZs. And firewalls is a method to enforce access control policies. And basically what they say is, here's somebody trying to get in, here's a type of data, here's somebody coming across a port that's trying to access my systems, and I have a rule set up that says don't allow that, right? Just bounce it back. And it can be a physical device on the network, or if you're big enough, you could actually have DMZ servers that sit in front of your whole network and then watch the traffic coming into your site completely, right? And they do packet inspection of the data that's coming through. And like I said, they basically look, to see, you have to set up rules to say this data can be allowed through, these ports cannot be allowed through, these ports can be allowed in through with these people, that type of thing. And you can, like banks and that type of thing, actually have a demilitarized zone where they have one set of firewalls facing the outside and one set of firewalls facing the inside. And in between are things like file transfer protocols, web servers, and mail servers that kind of get inspected twice on the way in and then on the way into the DMZ and on the way out of the DMZ. Macs and PCs both have built-in firewalls that help shield your computer from known malicious cyber attacks, but you can purchase additional personal firewalls for your systems that will do more, allow you to have more access to doing things like setting up that ports and being able to see what actually is being filtered out and that type of thing. So, like anything, security threats evolve, right? And some of the evolving threats that we're seeing come up now are things like software supply chain vulnerabilities. And what these are is they are when a cyber threat or an actor finds a vulnerability in an underlying piece of software that's embedded in multiple computer software offerings. So like a Java library. And now suddenly you don't have a vulnerability in one application, you have a vulnerability in all your applications across your whole business, and that they all need to be resolved. And this suddenly, makes it very difficult to respond to, especially again if you're a big or an older company, because you may have that piece of software running on a piece of legacy code that has been updated in 10 years, and now you need to figure out how you fix that vulnerability without breaking that system. So those are called supply chain vulnerabilities because it's not targeting a particular application, it's at a lower level and it runs across the whole organization. And then as AI becomes more and more and more and more and more used, becomes the problem of data poisoning. Because AI is really only as good as the data that it has, the data that is in its banks that it's pulling on to make these decisions. And what data poisoning is that it's injecting corrupted data into the AI systems to skew the results. So there's also just some of the crazy stuff that some of the AI systems do. That's not really data poisoning. That's just bad programming, like when it hallucinates, right? It makes up stories. But this is really like it's actually giving it bad information. And then there's new technologies like biometrics and behavior-based security. for a while they thought biometrics were just, oh my gosh, now we're totally secure. Nobody can take my eyeball. Nobody can take my fingerprint. I'm totally secure. But then they found how to scrape that data from other systems that have the pattern of your fingerprint, the pattern of your eyeball as data, and use that pattern of your eyeball to crack into biometrics. So again, cyber criminals are always trying to, any problem, they're trying to crack into it. And then there's cloud security, right? So, I always say back when I started in IT, in our data center, we had a room, almost as big as a football field full of storage, right? Just rack after rack of storage. And that was all our data there, right? Now those machines shrank and shrank and shrank, and now the same data could be on a little tiny system, a blade like this big, and it's probably running someplace else in a cloud. And that brings new problems, right? Because the data center I was in was like a bunker, right? There was peripheral cameras all around. It was like double walled. It was you had to have use your badge and your iPrint to get into the data center. You know what I mean? So that data in that storage room was pretty physically secure from anybody getting to it. But now it's on a blade running next to maybe my competitor's data. So we always talked, about before data in movement, right? It's going from here to there. How do I encrypt it? How do I secure it? And for a long time, we didn't worry about data at rest because it was in this big vault. Who's going to get to it? It's at rest. But now when we're putting stuff up in the cloud and you don't have complete control over it, you could be sitting next to your competitor. Somebody could hack into that overall, environment and steal lots of data. Now we have to start worrying about encrypting our data at rest. It's probably not something you need to worry about. It's just if you're going to use cloud services, you probably need to ask that cloud service how they encrypt the data at rest. So we've gone through a lot of things, right? So just want to kind of go over some best practices, right? And some of these we've kind of talked about, but one of the best practices is good cyber hygiene, right? Which is a lot of the things we talked about. Good password management, keeping your systems clean of old versions, and auto updating software where possible. You also want to make sure you train your staff, right? Like, so you've done some learning today, maybe take it back to your staff. You definitely want to talk to them about social engineering and phishing schemes. More than 90% of successful cyber attacks start with a phishing email. You also want to make sure you're prepared to respond to a cyber attack. You want to have a cyber incident response plan, and you want to make sure that you have a backup plan and that you've tested the backup plan, right? That you've restored from it at least once, that you have a written procedure and how to do it, right? So that you know how to recover if something happens. And definitely check out the Cyber and Information Security Agency's free resources. They have multiple resources to improve your cybersecurity practices, and they even have like a new feature where you can request vulnerability scanning as a internet scanning as a service. So definitely check this out. This is that link below. So I would really recommend that you go to that site, and this, like I said, this one is for the small businesses, and continue your kind of cyber security journey there. And also here are some additional resources that'll also help you. And again, the SBDC cybersecurity resources is also a great place to go. So that is pretty much it for me for today. Do we have any questions? Can you discuss accessing documents using VSP versus cloud and a cloud safe? Well, VPN and the cloud are not the same things. VPN really has to do with, you can have data in a cloud and then also have a VPN so that when you go to get that data off the cloud, like I said, the cloud means that the data is being stored someplace else. And again, you'd want it to be encrypted where it's being stored. VPN has to do with then when you're retrieving that data and it's coming over the network, right? So both of those would be good things to have. What about security breaches at password managers? That's a question I get every time that this comes up. There have been a lot of attempts so far, but there really hasn't been a breach. And, you know, I'm guessing, you know, I used to work for a bank before this, and, you know, their cybersecurity efforts were astonishing, right? And I'm pretty much sure that they're the same at these password management sites, right? That they have to be on constant vigilance, because I'm positive, I mean, I'm not positive, who knows, but they're probably constantly under attack. But that doesn't mean that they're, you know, people are being successful as long as they do it. And it is certainly something to think about, but, you know, if you could remember 12 character, you know, uppercase, lowercase numbers, special character passwords, then, you know, by all means, don't use one, but you definitely want to have good, strong passwords.
All right, thank you so much. I'm just going to wrap up here, but please, we have got some time, so if you have questions, please keep putting them into the chat. We'll go back to it. I just wanted to draw your attention to our survey. I put that in the chat just a few moments ago. We really do value your feedback. We use it to improve our events in the future. It's also a requirement of our funder, the Small Business Administration, so that we can keep offering these great webinars at no cost. And I promise you, it's very, very short. It's only 4 questions. It'll take you like 2 seconds to do, but it really does help us out tremendously. So please fill that out for us. I also placed in the chat our resource page. That's updated regularly with all of our upcoming webinars, funding opportunities, and other resources that small businesses find really beneficial, and we keep that up to date as well. So please check that out. I want to thank you all for attending this webinar today. I appreciate you spending your lunch hour with us. And I also want to say thank you to Sheila for presenting such a great presentation on such an important topic. We really appreciate your time. I'm going to pass it over to Sheila for, I think there's 1 or 2 questions that came in. So I want to make sure that we get to those, but thank you so much for joining us.
For the question about you have a small business without an internal IT person, I would definitely check out the CISA site. There's information in there about how to contact people to help you with reviews and that type of thing of your security. Are there any other questions?
All right, fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you again, Sheila. We really appreciate all of you spending time with us, and we appreciate you, Sheila, for presenting. We look forward to seeing all of you in the future. We've got lots of great webinars coming up, so please check them out, and we hope to see you soon. All right, bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.